All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the VOCA 2021 Special Projects webinar. I have begun the recording, so if you want to visit this at a later date or if you've missed this, this will be up on the ICJI website within a week or so of this presentation. If you're not already, I just ask if you could please mute yourself until the Q&A at the end. There's a chat box that is available to be used throughout the meeting, and one of my coworkers, Ellen Sheets, will be monitoring the chat and helping answer questions throughout. So please feel free to use that as needed. So to access this RFP, if you haven't already found it, it is on our CJI website, which is cji.in.gov. And then if you go to the Victim Services page, towards the bottom of that page will be a VOCA Special Projects box. And then if you click Learn More, it'll take you to a page that has more information about it. And you'll see this little snippet in there, and it has a Request for Proposal button that will pull up a PDF of this RFP. So this application opened Wednesday, July 7th at 9 a.m. and it will close Wednesday, August 4th at 11:59 p.m. We strongly encourage and recommend everyone to submit this 48 hours prior to the deadline. It just helps us if there is any technical errors or glitches that occur within the system with an application. It gives us enough time to try to resolve this issue or any error that might occur before the deadline. The award period is October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022. All projects should begin on October 1st and be in operation no later than 60 days after this date. Failure to have the funded project operational within 60 days will result in the cancellation of the grant and deobligation of all funds. So a quick overview. The purpose of VOCA is to support the provision of services to victims of crime throughout the nation. Crime victim is defined as a person who has suffered physical, sexual, financial, and/or emotional harm as the result of the commission of a crime. Services are defined as those efforts that respond to the emotional, psychological, and/or physical needs of the crime victims, assist victims to stabilize their lives after victimization, assist victims to understand and participate in the criminal justice system, and restore a measure of safety and security for the victim. And so for this VOCA application, this is something that's somewhat new to our VOCA grants, but OVC has come out with these areas of emphasis that they want to try to prioritize funding for these areas. And so as part of our review of these applications, we're going to prioritize applications that meet these areas of emphasis. And so these areas of emphasis are diverse and frequently marginalized communities, equity, civil rights, racial justice, and equal opportunity, and underserved communities, including isolated rural areas, and communities affected by persistent poverty or inequality. So eligible entity types include state agencies, units of local government, nonprofit organizations, and faith-based organizations. One of the requirements for our funding is that you have a registered DUNS number, an active and current registration with SAM.gov, and a good standing with the Department of Revenue, Department of Workforce Development, and Secretary of State. And for the SAM.gov registration, they recently updated the interface, just the entire website as a whole. And if you are listed on there private, we are unable to see your SAM.gov registration. And so we just ask that you check your registration and just make sure that you are opted in to their search authorization so that we're able to locate your registration and be able to move forward with executing any grants for this VOCA Special Projects and just all grants in general. Some other requirements and trainings is the determination of suitability to interact with participating minors. And for this, every 5 years, additional background checks must be run on any grant or match funded employee, including volunteers, that interact with anyone under the age of 18. This is a required condition of any DOJ grant for more details, please visit this link, and I'll let you guys get that link if you need it. The civil rights training, we sent out an email a few months ago about this civil rights training. If you have any questions, you can reach out to your grant manager and they will provide you with the email address to send any questions that you have about this to our legal, our general counsel monitors the email address, and they will be able to acknowledge any questions that you may have for this training. And then any other training and resources can be found on our website at this link below, the CJI grantee training and resources. So to begin your application in IntelliGrants, you'll log into your IntelliGrants account. If you don't already have one, you will click the new user link and follow through the instructions to create a new account, and then we can complete your registration and get you registered within IntelliGrants. And then you will, on the My Home page, you will go to the View Available Proposals section and click on View Opportunities. And this will take you to the My Opportunities page, and it will list all open funding for CJI. So not just the VOCA Special Projects, but any open applications at the time. And you'll find the 2021 VOCA Special Projects grant and click Apply Now. And so this is what it will look like. You'll have View Available Proposals, you'll click the View Opportunities button, and then within that section will be where you find the VOCA Special Projects application. Once you have initiated your application, you will see a screen like this. You go to the Forms menu, click your page, and complete all of the pages that appear under this form. There are all forms that need to be completed. There's the contact page. You will fill out the contact. This guy will reach out for notice of your award and for anything relating to your grant on the road. So these will be the pages that you'll have to complete for your grant. The contact page, there's the project information page, and this is be where you put your SAM registration expiration date. And then if you receive more than $750,000 in federal funds, you are required to have an audit and be attached within your application. All government agency audits are included in the county audit and should have one attached. If you're a prosecutor's office, your audit is included with the audit of the entire county, and that will be the audit that you include within your application. The programmatic information will be where you put information about your project, what you're wanting to do. There's the problem statement and analysis. And then there's the goals, objectives, and outcomes page. The goal should directly address the problem identified in the problem statement. Objectives are the steps needed to achieve the goal. They should be concrete, action-oriented, measurable, and specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timely, or smart. An example of an objective: by September 2022, a minimum of 50 culturally and linguistically appropriate support groups for survivors of domestic violence will be provided. So it gives the timeline, it gives a specific measurable with 50 cultural and linguistically appropriated support groups being provided, and it lays out with all of those requirements as part of an objective. An outcome is a measurable. Outcomes measure objectives and criteria for how the program is deemed to be effective. These will also be measurable, but it will be a direct result of the objective that you are listing. So 85% of participants will indicate that they have learned ways to act in their own best interest. Program description is the who, what, when, where, why, and how of your program. And then you will also complete the evidence-based practice, and the use of volunteers forms. Some important notes: all grants from ICJI Victim Services are reimbursement grants, which means that your agency must first incur the expense prior to us reimbursing for the expense. Verification of the expenses along with verification of payment of expenses must be provided to ICJI on a monthly or quarterly basis prior to reimbursement. And then just a general note, the requirement for the VOCA project is 20%. All projects must be for one-time, non-recurring costs.
Oh my
and
lord,
support the expansion, enhancement, or delivery of direct service to crime victims. Applicants must be able to demonstrate how these one-time expenditures will support the expansion or enhancement of the delivery of direct services to crime victims. VOCA funds may support only the prorated share of an item that is not used exclusively for victim-related activities. If an expense is not used exclusively for VOCA-eligible victim services, you may only apply for the prorated items that serve crime victims. So if your part of your budget is you want to get something that is only going to be used for 50% of VOCA, then we can only reimburse for 50% of that item because the other 50% is not related to VOCA. Some examples of some one-time projects or costs for this grant: public awareness campaigns that raise awareness about crime victimization, education presentation in schools, community centers, and other public forums, emergency assistance to victims, ADA facility accessibility, Braille, TTY, or TTD equipment, other auxiliary aids for deaf and hard of hearing clients, translation of materials and website for direct service awareness, outreach, or education, development of a database for client services, skills training of providers, allied professionals, and volunteers to enhance quality of services to victims, project evaluations that determine the effectiveness of victim services and services provided to marginalized communities, training materials such as books, training manuals, and electronic training resources for direct service providers, and website design or redesign.
Sam Scheiblower is in the building.
And so this is just a list of some potential ideas for what could go into this project. There are plenty of other project ideas that could be used on this VOCA Special Projects grant. The main to emphasize is just that as long as it is VOCA allowable and you are able to explain or justify in your application how it enhances or expands your current services, then it is something that we will consider in our application review. So it doesn't have to be just this specific list of
the priorities of the foundation so closely match everything that we do with housing,
just as long as it is VOCA allowable.
Can everyone please mute their mic? There's a lot of background noise.
I'm trying to mute as I see it, and so.
Thank you. I mean, I think everybody can also mute on their own, but yeah, that'd be great.
Right. Some ineligible budget items is administrative costs over 10% of the total grant budget, direct cash financial assistance to a client, such as cash, gift cards, or checks, food and beverages, lobbying and or fundraising, immigration fees, purchase of real estate, construction, physical modification to buildings, including minor renovations, vehicles, fuel, and overtime is allowed, but to claim the increased rate, there must be a separate line item in the budget that includes the overtime rate of pay. Supplanting. Federal funds must be used to supplement existing funds for program activities and cannot replace or supplant non-federal funds that have been appropriated for the same purpose. For the budget narrative page, be sure all items in the budget are included in your budget narrative. So anything that is in your budget, from personnel to supplies to anything, consultants and contractors, anything that is in your budget should be included in the budget narrative and an explanation of what each item will be used for towards the purpose of your grant. The grant reviewers are not required to contact you for clarification, so you'll want to be as specific as possible and as thorough in your explanation of each item as possible in your budget narrative. Any missing information in this section could disqualify that budget item for funding. The attachments required, there's an attachments form in the forms menu, and these are the attachments that you will need to include, and that is the total agency budget. And this is found on ICJI's website. It is for nonprofits, and it is your entire agency budget of all grants, and just lists out everything that is part of the budget for your agency. The sustainability plan, the timeline, a letter of endorsement for this program specifically, and then job descriptions for any position listed in personnel, consultation form, the EEOP certification, and then you will also need to include, if you are wanting to apply for a match waiver or a volunteer waiver, those can also be found, I believe, in the RFP. Correct, Ellen? Or are those on the web? Okay. For technical assistance, contact the ICJI help desk at cjihelpdesk@cji.in.gov. Help desk hours are Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30, except for state holidays. ICJI is not responsible for technical issues with grant submission within 48 hours of grant deadline. So that's also part of the reason that we strongly encourage everyone to submit prior to the 48 hours of the deadline so that we are able to assist with any technical issues that may occur. For assistance with any other requirements, please contact the Victim Services Division. So I will try to address as many questions as possible that Ellen has not already addressed. So for the people that are asking for the link, the presentation will be included on the CGI website afterwards. So if I see that Ellen has some of the links in the chat, but if there's any others that were missed, you can come back to this once it is up and you can have access to those links.
Max, there's a question on there about the RFP states respond to emotional, psychological, and physical needs of the crime victims, assist victims to stabilize their lives. This is what the RFP states, stabilize their lives after victimization, assist victims to understand and participate in the criminal justice system, restore a measure of safety and security for the victim. But later says a list of things not covered. Capital improvement. Capital improvement has never been approved, never been allowed by VOCA. So a capital improvement project would not be allowable.
And so can I just clarify that a capital improvement, you know, if there are critical building renovations to allow for safe shelter for victims, does that
or increased security? Yeah, or increased security.
Or
They're not really capital. They're not capital improvements. It doesn't sound like it's just to improve safety and security.
So those things you could always, you know, submit your application, explain, you know, as Max had said, how that will benefit your program, explain how it meets the areas of interest that OVC has included, OJP has included, and you know, submit your application. Just make sure you document it well.
Okay, thank you.
So there's a question, how much is available overall and how many awards are you expecting? We aren't really sure how many applications to expect, but the available funding that we're expecting right now is about $3 million. But we don't have any sort of limit on what your budget could include or like a range for how much to include in your budget. But that's kind of where we are stood on it right now, is we weren't really sure how many projects or how many agencies might apply. So we just kind of left it open, and then we would go from there once we had a tally of how many we were trying to fund.
The only other thing I would add is that remember the areas, the priority areas that OJP has, or OVC has listed are going to be things that we look at to prioritize our funding for this.
There's a question, is there a limit or requirement of personnel regarding full-time or part-time, as well as contract or vendor limitations for the budget? Since it's only a 1 year, one-time project, we aren't recommending to include any new personnel. Just it's not a VOCA that is going to be sustainable for a long-term program. So to include personnel on this, we didn't think would be the best use for it versus a project or like something that you were trying to, that would only require a one-time purchase. Hopefully that made sense.
I would recommend that, you know, as you guys are thinking about what you want to put in this application, that you go back to the RFP and you reread the eligible projects section where we've given you some examples, and reread the section where we talk about what the areas of emphasis are for OVC. So those are going to be the two things that you want to keep in mind as you're reviewing the reviewing what you are interested in applying for.
Can an individual donor contribution serve as match? And Ellen, you can correct me or step in if I start to struggle with it. But from my best understanding is, as long as the donor or the donation is within the grant period, it can be used as match for this period.
Yes, as long as it is VOCA utilized for VOCA allowable activities. So any VOCA match in any VOCA grant has to be VOCA allowable.
Right. Can our proposal include multiple projects such as website design, outreach design, and phone systems, for example, or it needs to be one? So it can be, it doesn't have to be like one project. You can include multiple into one application. It's all in how you explain it into your narrative and the programmatic information where you're explaining your application and everything that you're wanting to do with your program. Just include the explanation for each of the items or projects that you're wanting to have funded within this application.
Max, I'm going to scroll back to the top of the chat. I think we've gotten an awful lot of questions and I want to make sure we're not missing any. So I'm
right.
going to start from the top.
If 100% of the line item is exclusively used for victims, does it need to be prorated? No. Proration only needs to be if there is something that is not going to be used for 100% victim services or 100% VOCA related activities. Sorry, go ahead, Ellen.
I didn't have anything. I'm just looking at the questions. The question, would an elevator for survivor use qualify as ADA accessibility? I believe, and I'm not sure on that. I'll have to double check, but I believe that an elevator would be considered a capital project, not. Now a lift is something different, where, you know, someone was their wheelchair was being lifted to a next floor, but I'm not 100% sure on that. We can try to get an answer and respond back to you, Jenna.
Can an agency with multiple VOCA sites apply for and potentially be awarded from this opportunity multiple times? To my best understanding and knowledge, yes, as long as it all just kind of goes back to as long as you are able to just justify how the project that you're applying for enhances or expands your current program. If there's an agency with multiple like satellite offices that are applying for the grant, they can all be potentially funded depending on the review and the allowability of the application being submitted.
And keep in mind, though, that we are looking at a $3 million award, not a great amount of money if we have, 100 applicants.
Right. It all just depends on how many applicants we end up having and the amount of funding available to give out. What can be used? Oh, go ahead.
I'm not sure if you've answered this one. Is there any allowance for enhancement to existing equipment in a center of hope? Did we answer that one?
I did not answer that
Okay.
one. I did not see that one.
Again, you would just have to add that into your application, show how it's going to improve your program, show how it meets the areas of emphasis, because that is going to be our priorities. You can request it. We just don't know what to expect as far as our applicants.
For the question, what can be used as match? Anything that is VOCA allowable can be used as match. So it's a fairly vague answer, but anything that you could be reimbursed for on a VOCA grant can be included as match on a VOCA grant. Should our letter of endorsement be from a specific person or partner to our organization? So yes, so your letter of endorsement will be from an agency or an organization in the area that is just supporting the program and supporting the idea of additional funding for your program for your agency. Ellen, we got the question about the elevators, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to respond back to Jenna with more specifics.
You do not have to be a current recipient of VOCA. Correct, Ellen?
I don't believe so, but again, it still has to be able to provide information on how it's going to improve your program. So I would think that we'll probably be giving priority to, any programs that would show the emphasis, areas of emphasis. And, at this point, we just don't know what to expect as far as how much money we have to go around, or how the $3 million, how that's going to go around.
Do you have any information for the question about the ALS light for Cortex flow as an allowable expense?
I'm not at that question, so.
Okay. Linda, I believe the letter of support has to be from an organization and not from an individual.
We have a question here. We are aware that CJI directives preclude contractors as opposed to subgrantee agency employees from accessing IntelliGrants. Our agency grant writer is currently a contractor. Will this contractor be permitted to access IntelliGrants for the purpose of grant proposal entry and submission on behalf of our agency? No, unfortunately, there is no, contractors cannot have any access to IntelliGrants regardless of the role. They are not allowed to have access to the program at all.
Is that a security? Is there a reason for that? Is that a security reason? Or I'm just kind of curious because a lot of people use contractors for grant writing.
Right, it is a security issue, a concern, because we want to make sure that it's similar, similar to the same reason why we don't want each of you guys using each other's login. First of all, the contractor may or may not be paid through the grant, which if a contractor is paid through the grant, they shouldn't have access to be able to make changes and changes or even fiscal reports in the grant, because they're a contracted employee. They're not an actual agency employee. And also we want to make sure that as far as the checks and balances, that the agency has their own process as far as ensuring that the documentation is correct and it's not just handed over to someone who's not within the agency to complete these documents.
Okay, thanks.
Jessica, for your question, so will proposals be partially funded if need be? So it's not like it's an all or nothing. It all just kind of revolves back to how much funding we have available. So if we have the funding to be able to fund a program in full, then we will, but it can be partially funded. So if we're only able to fund a percentage of it, then we'll do our best to fund as much as possible of all of the applications that are submitted.
Max, did we answer, can our proposal include multiple projects?
Yes.
Okay. One thing I want to add to one question here. If 100% of the line item is exclusively used for victims, does it need to be prorated? That kind of depends. If it is a operational expense, it does have to be prorated. If it is something like, something that's going to go to the victims that you're working with in your VOCA program, then it does not have to be prorated.
Heather, for your question, will it be possible to have a link or copy of the PowerPoint slides? All of this will be this record is all being recorded and will be put up on the CJI website, so that the first portion of going through the PowerPoint will be included in what is put up on the CJI website. And I can also have him put on the just the PowerPoint itself, so that you don't have to go through the recording again if you don't want. Will there be a match expectation? Yes. So the match expectation for this is the same as a normal VOCA application of 20%.
The question about the cortex flow, again, that will just be something that you would just have to, as we've mentioned before, have to explain how it would improve your program, how it will address concerns or areas of what the
areas of emphasis.
OJP's areas of emphasis, and just you have to be sure to just document it very, very well to explain to us what it is that you're wanting that for, and how it's going to benefit the program.
There's a question, will you consider a match waiver? So as far as I know, once all of the application process is through and all of them have been reviewed, you can still apply for a match waiver for your project. And that should be on the RFP and also on the CJI website waiver document. Can I restate the award date and date program? So the project date is from October 1st, 2021 through September 30th, 2022. And then the program has to be operational within 60 days of the start date, which is October 1st, 2021. An example of when something from benefits victims would need to be prorated. So this one's not specific. Can you give a better example than I can probably come up with, Ellen, for that?
Sure. So if we are, if we have a, if they're on your budget, there's something such as, let's see here. I'm drawing a blank too, Max. If we have,
it goes to like utilities.
Yeah, the proration is typically utilities, but you know, if you have something that you're wanting to, I think one of the examples for the type of program would be training materials. You know, if you had training materials that you were utilizing not just for your programs with your client, your victims, but you were also utilizing the same books and manuals for when you go out to the schools and you're doing more of a prevention type work, then you would need to prorate that, because VOCA doesn't reimburse for prevention. So if there was items that you were using across programs, in which VOCA may not be supporting some of those programs, then you would need to prorate it.
Is there a specific definition of underserved populations, or is it to us to justify why our target population is underserved? So they're in the RFP as part of there's a heading in it that is titled areas of emphasis. And in that, one of the bullet points lists out the underserved populations. So it's African-American, LGBTQ, and I don't remember what all is included in it, but it does include a list of specific populations and groups that are included as part of the underserved.
Does everybody know that you can get a copy of the RFP from our website, the CJI website? It is not associated with the application or in IntelliGrant, but it is on our website as all of our RFPs are.
Are there any other questions? Were there any others that you wanted to address, Ellen?
I don't think so. I think we got them all.
Max, I was just typing out a question and I don't think I can type faster.
Okay.
In our area, the Amish are a very large population and they are extremely underserved. And I've noticed on the grant RFPs that I've read, they're never listed. Could you see that something, because the kids that I'm seeing now, like, they don't speak the English that we speak. I have to get everything transformed to the English that they're learning in school, which is different.
Yeah, so I have never seen it listed as underserved, but I would think that would be included as underserved. Wouldn't you,
Okay, because they're like 33% of our population in Adams.
Yes, absolutely. Any population that isn't served, or a population that is newly served, like I believe Amish have just kind of started accepting services more recent, the last few years.
Mhm.
Those would definitely be underserved populations.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Is there a specific calculation we should use when prorating? So it's based on either the percentage of so the percentage of, I guess, victims that are going to be served by the piece of equipment, or the victims, whatever it would be, or if it's like utilities, then it would be the percentage of I'm blanking on this. Can you help me here, Ellen?
Yeah, so we typically, and there is more than one way to be able to do this, but the easiest way is to look at what the grant fund, so what this VOCA, not all of your VOCAs together, but what this VOCA percentage would be to your budget, your annual budget. And that is a percentage, and that percentage is what would be the proration. If you have any problems with that, reach out to your grant manager or me or Max. We'll be glad to help you figure what that would be.
There's a question. Can you talk a bit about the difference between prevention programs and public awareness campaigns or education presentations, as one is allowable and one is not?
So VOCA has never allowed prevention. There is a fine line between prevention and education. So as long as an agency is explaining what their role is, how to, what they can assist with, and how to reach out to your agency, that's considered to be education and not prevention.
Any other questions from anybody? Wheelchair ramp. I think you mentioned that earlier, hadn't you, on the wheelchair ramp or like the lift?
Yeah, there's a lift and a wheelchair ramp. And I'm going to pull back up this list of examples and see if we have anything on there. So Amanda, I would go back and look at the RFP. One of the examples is ADA facility accessibility.
And public awareness activities include social media costs. I think that would just go back to if you are able to explain or justify in your narrative how that would relate to your program and expand the program or project itself, then it's something that would be reviewed and considered. Are ramps only eligible if they're a new physical installation? Do you have any information for that, Ellen?
Yeah, I think that would just have to be, you just have to provide justification of what you're needing, what you'd like, the cost, all of that. It says ADA facility accessibility. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a new item. So I would think that you should be able to kind of, just explain in detail what it is that is needed. If let's say, just as an example, let's say the wheelchair ramp is many, many years old and is rickety and needs to be replaced, or something needs to be fixed on it, something broke. That's certainly something that you could put in there and explain to us what the issue is.
If there are no other questions, then that is the end of our presentation and webinar. I'll give it a minute or two. Okay. ICJI have specific definitions of construction. Does that only apply to new structures? I believe that would also fall under the capital improvements type of the unallowable costs, but Kelly said the IRS finds capital improvements on their website. So I would just reference that and see how whatever ideas you may have could fall into that, and then just go from there. But if there are no other questions, then thank you for joining and participating. John, yeah, the PowerPoint will be uploaded to the CJI website, which is cji.in.gov, and then it will be the webinar, the recording, and the PowerPoint will both be included. But thank you everyone for joining. Hope you have a great day and great rest of the week.